like to call to order this special meeting for the Dexter Township Board of Trustees for Monday, April 3rd, 2023. So first we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Second is roll call. Lonnie Scott.
Here.
Michelle Stambolelli.
Present.
Mayor Smets.
Here.
Karen Zakenga.
Yes.
Laura Sanders.
Yes. Here.
Karen Nolte.
Here.
And myself, Diane Ratkovich, present. Is there anyone that has any conflict of interest on the agenda items on the docket tonight? Seeing none, we'll move forward. First call for public comment. Does anyone want to come up and address the board? Seeing no one. The next item is approval of the agenda. Someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Or
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Approval of the agenda. The first item is elected official compensation discussion, led by Trustee Scott, Treasurer Metz, and Clerk Stambolelli.
I think for my portion, I'm still digging into all of the details to be able to send information around for the meeting that we're having later in April. So appreciate what the clerk was able to send over today, and we'll incorporate that as I'm digging into those policies and able to bring information forward at our next meeting.
And I just wanted to bring forth to the Board of Trustees 5 comparable-ish number of residents and what their median household and their pay rates were. I know I did state to Karen and Trustee Zakenga, as well as the members of the Board of Trustees, that I would research this for quite some time. So I did want to bring forth some information, and that I'm happy to assist Trustee Scott in any way.
Is there any information you wanted to highlight here, or is this just for our information for tonight? Anything you want a discussion on?
Karen has something to say.
So at the last meeting, I had volunteered to look into healthcare policy. Diane knows this. So, David Rohr had volunteered to offer to help me with that. And then subsequently, in corresponding with Diane and David, I think Diane, maybe tell me if I'm capturing what you said wrong, but I think you're saying that should be folded into an overall discussion about compensation, shouldn't be handled separately. And then I said to Diane, I noticed that there are a few townships around here that have compensation committees, and given that we haven't been able to set a compensation policy and agree on a compensation policy, I wondered if that might be something worth considering. And the compensation committee is charged with, doing this research and developing a policy and then bringing that policy to the board, not necessarily like with the budget request asking for specific increases at that time, but really framing the policy for both salary and benefits for elected officials and staff with a philosophy, and then bringing that policy to the board for approval. And then when the budget request comes forward, it's in compliance with the policy that was previously approved by the board.
Yeah.
Does anybody know, okay, so I know that Webster does a compensation committee. Do we know who sits on those committees? Now, is that an elected official that does that? Is it a chosen, appointed elected official that's going to serve on that committee to? But
Well,
I was under the understanding that it was like a third party type situation, so it did not include any of the elected officials at all. So I didn't know if that's the route that we wanted, right, that we wanted to go that route, or how we would put this committee together and what it would look like.
Well, I was thinking, because I didn't really look into it at all, I saw that SIO also has one, and I think
Yeah.
maybe Ann Arbor Township does. I thought it might make sense to
Yeah.
just start by seeing who has a compensation committee, or maybe even talking to MTA and asking them if they have recommendations about a compensation committee,
Yeah.
and maybe finding out what others are doing and seeing if we can see their charge and composition, and then, and then we might be a little more, then we could come and see what others are doing and shape ours around what others are doing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate this.
And I agree, and just looking into this, there's so much more discussion necessary, because if you look at the amount of hours people are working at these locations, I mean, they vary to 12 hours all the way up to 32, and we used to be 40 hours. So what are they doing that's different? Commercial, farmland,
Yeah,
whatever the case is, but all in all,
Population size.
yeah.
Because, I mean, if you compare us to Lima, I mean, it's a very different,
absolutely. And
area.
they have 2 precincts,
Right.
where York Township has 4, Salem
Right.
as well. So, or they have 5, I believe, in York. Or they might have 4, I'm not sure. I don't have that. And that, I didn't gain that data either, which is really important.
Yeah.
I'm just reading here, a compensation committee is for the, looks like it's for the elected officials, not for the staff.
For which, for which,
A township, I mean, compensation is for, a compensation committee is for township officers, not for staff. So,
that kind of makes sense in a way, because it is hard to set our own salaries.
right.
Absolutely.
Right, and also, I mean, with the staff, I think that we voted, and I don't know if we made a policy, but last year, we voted to allow the elected officials to determine the staff salaries, if I remember correctly,
But
right?
then
Yeah,
we
we did.
reversed, didn't we rescind that?
Did we?
No,
I don't think no,
we did
rescind that.
rescind it, but and then we allowed the executives to make the decisions for staff.
Really?
Not full board, yes. And that was in 2021, and we haven't changed it since. But for compensation review, as well as compensation increase, it was supposed to be the executive committee per resolution.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure we rescinded that then because there was a lot of pushback on that.
I don't think
can
so,
check.
but
Yeah,
we can
need to-
check.
We need to look into it, because I don't.
Do you have any institutional memory of that, Janice? If we rescinded, do you know if we rescinded the ability for the clerk and supervisor and treasurer to determine the staff salaries? We had made that agreement,
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a while ago.
Yeah, it was 2021, and it was board approval. We did rescind that and the board gave the authority to the executives.
I
And that's the
remember
last one that we. Oh, this thing's loud now.
You said that was in 2021?
Correct. September?
I'm opening the minutes for September right now.
Do we need to, we don't need to know this right now, right? We can look it up. We can
Yeah, we can
look it up
Mhm.
later and
Okay.
come back.
This was in September 2021, resolution to increase hourly rates for township staff.
Okay, then we'll do some research on that. It's not critical at this moment.
No.
Okay. So, any other discussion on elected official compensation?
The other thing that I think would be helpful to add here, if possible, is to know about the benefits. I know that that's an open question, so if we could actually drill into Webster and York just to see what is provided, if anything. So I just did some quick math, just dividing the highest paid elected official salary for each of the townships here by their number of residents, to get sort of the average of, or amount per resident, for example. And obviously, it's going to vary, like these numbers vary, and there's not really a lot of account for whether it's 12 or 32 hours. But if we matched what Webster Township, which of this list appears to be the closest to Dexter Township, then our officials would be at $48,750.39 if we match the same amount per resident based on the highest paid elected official in Webster. And if you break down the same, Lima Township is actually the highest per resident at $8.75. And so if we match that, just giving you the range, that's actually $58,353. Just looking at
That's not, I mean, well, we can talk about this later, but that's not how a compensation study is done. What you're doing is not, that's not really, that is not really the basis for, that's not how I would measure it.
there's a whole lot of information. I mean, the median household income,
Yeah, right,
I get all
yeah.
of that. There's a lot of variables. Just trying to simplify it down to give us a range here of the closest townships based on this list.
But I would be more interested to know, like, what is the variability in the hours? Is that just what the supervisors reported, or is this based on the level of support staff they have? You know, is there a township manager in these places? Is there an office manager? You know, so, I mean, why is one supervisor, did some of them don't, I mean, there isn't a deputy clerk pay in Yorktown, you know, do they not all have deputies? Or we know that Webster Township's deputies only work a very few hours, so it's about how much support do they have, and then how does that drive their workload, you know?
I asked those questions as well. So when it comes to Lima Township and Lodi, I believe, their deputies work very few hours. Absolutely. So the elected officials take on more of the responsibility. And especially over in Lodi Township, those trustees come in during the jobs by statute, so during elections and during taxes.
Yes.
So you're completely right. Some are the Department of Zoning and Planning. Like up in the city of Dexter, I contacted them, but I mean, that was just so out of scope. You would think they're a relatively similar size population, but because of their commercial, they're completely different, where the treasurer makes, I want to say, $92,000-ish a year, plus a $5,000 stipend because she's also the assessor, which is a huge job.
Which township is that?
That's the city of Dexter.
City of Dexter, and that's true, that's Ann Arbor Township has a smaller population, but they have a lot of commercial property, and that commercial property drives workloads in somehow, which I don't really understand.
And another thing I thought was interesting is no one has benefits, but there are certain locations that the, and what I've stated before, the deputies are offered benefits. Because all in all, we are, if you're here for a long-term career, it's really not the place to be, because, I mean, you are civil servants sitting in these chairs. But when it comes to, let's say, your office manager, or your deputies, or your assessor, your Department of Planning and Zoning, even your recording secretary, very important positions. And, I mean, I know it's something I can't say because it's not a state law, but yeah, it's unfortunate that a deputy could easily be out of office if the treasurer or clerk isn't reappointed. And that's terrible, because that deputy has, for instance, deputy treasurer. He's been here since day one. My deputy's been here for a little over a year. But all in all, what they learn over time, you would think that person would stay in that chair to help the new person coming into office. Because at the end of the day, if you haven't sat in these chairs before, you're really lost. I mean,
Michelle, I know you were out of the room when we approved this, but the approved deputy clerk pay was $15 an hour. The retroactive.
I haven't watched the meeting yet, that part.
So just pointing out that's just for your spreadsheet.
Oh,
We did
Oh.
inform.
oh, it's incorrect on the spreadsheet, I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
My pens. But I did ask particular questions, and, I mean, do I think that there should be benefits here? Absolutely. I think any one of these positions should have that. But
So you're saying there were no benefits for elected officials, but there are benefits for staff in the other townships?
some of the other townships.
So it would be nice to add that as a line in here, to know that they're.
It's just more information. I just wanted to bring something
Yeah.
to the board
Yeah.
because you have asked on multiple occasions, which I understand. But I know Trustee Scott was mainly digging into this, but
Yeah,
I had
this is great.
time,
Love
so-
this. Yeah.
for a start.
It's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's hard, I mean, I feel like it's hard to determine, how these salaries, have kept up or not kept up with, current times, and how positions have changed or not changed in the townships. But, there is, these benchmarks are really important, but I also think we need to look at, what we want our elected officials, how available we want them, how we want them to perform in their jobs. And we could, set different standards, not crazy out of line with what other townships are doing. But again, we could look at what do we want for our township and, put that into place so that we can see different, a future that is in the direction that we would like it to be going. So I just want to say that. Any other discussion on compensation?
Do we want to go ahead and make a plan to put a compensation committee together? Or we just,
Well, there's two, I think it will have to be really clear, and if you want a group of the Board of Trustees to be a employment committee or a compensation committee, because that is formed by people outside the board, and that's just for the elected officials.
I
And
would suggest, if you know Jim Mashad, he's an HR consultant, and I'm sure he would help us out if we asked him. What he is.
back to you, Maris?
I was just saying, I think that it's a good idea to probably not include the elected officials. I think that we've gone over this for the last 2 years, and it doesn't seem to go anywhere. I think having a third party evaluate and come up with a decision, I think that's probably going to be our best bet. Because I think a lot of us have different ideas, and that's fine, but I think, for us, it's, we all have different roles, and it would just be better to be evaluated by a third party, in my personal opinion.
I like that idea. And then they will ask us what we do. And then they're able to have more guidelines.
That would not be I don't mind that. I think you guys had engaged an HR consultant a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure what happened with that, but I think a consultant to make recommendations would be different than a committee, would be a committee of the board, like any other committee that we have, and we would have to form it and decide what its charge is and decide what its composition was going to be.
I think we should reach out to Webster. I mean, I can reach out to John tomorrow, because I've talked to him briefly about their compensation committee. So I could reach out to him tomorrow to see how they go about doing it and who does that for them.
Do you
And
want to reach out to SIO too, because I think. they
Yeah, I
have
can
one
call
too.
SIO also, sure.
I think it's SIO has one also.
I just want to, I just need a little bit of clarity. If we are doing that, then do I need to be doing a bunch of research on it?
Probably not.
So should I wait until we are clear whether we're going to do a committee, or should I still try to pull something together for April?
I mean, I would think that they would do that. If we have a committee, I'm assuming that if we hire a third-party committee, that they have to be compensated somehow, I would assume, so. And I would feel like that they would be doing that legwork, right? But it's all up in the air because we don't know.
Well, we're meeting in a couple weeks, right? So we're not talking about a long.
Okay,
Liza?
yeah. I mean, I'm just getting confused. Are you talking about a compensation committee, which is very outside of anybody sitting at these tables? Or are you talking about a compensation group from, so?
Because that can be costly too, and we did reach out to a company that never got back to us, AESC or what have you, so we did attempt to go that route. I mean, honestly, I would say, Trustee Scott, give individuals a call, see how they came up with their figures, what they do. I mean, that's the way, I just reached out to the clerk of these locations, but, I mean, I think personally, we could come up with this. I mean, I versus.
Compensation committee has a lot of rules and a lot of, so, I mean, it should, but I think they can only meet every 2 years.
What are you looking at there, Diane? Is that
I'm looking
MPA?
at the guidelines for a compensation committee for a township board.
Oh.
That's very long, so I don't want to read all of it.
Well, I think the purpose of that type of committee is usually set up so that the board itself is not deciding their own salaries, which
Makes sense.
frankly, like whether we wanted to do that or not, we already did that at the last meeting. Like they're set for this budget year, right? I mean, we can obviously make amendments or changes, but really that's a budget process question for that piece. I think the questions that we had are, one, are we comparable? Because there was a lot of discussion about whether or not we should do larger raises than just the cost of living increase raises that we provided for. And also then, do we have a policy, and my understanding was we don't, around that type of compensation for staff as well, whether those raises, for example, the way that I was taking this was we come up with a blanket policy of we're going to provide for cost of living increases based on this metric for the staff when we budget each year. That's what I was looking at, right? That's the type of policy I was thinking. My understanding of a compensation committee that would be external would be they're making recommendations about what the board should make as a larger process for budget making every couple of years. So that would fit the guidelines of why it would be more than, most places don't change this every year. I think to what Trustee Sakinga was suggesting is more of a committee to come up with the policy that is what I think I was talking about, but maybe a hybrid that also includes this as our baseline for the elected officials, kind of the same thing. It's a cost of living increase, but no more and less XYZ type exceptions, right? Like we just had a year where there was a lot of fluctuation in inflation or other things, which obviously is covered by the cost of living increases, but any of those kind of like drastic circumstances. So I guess but I do want to clarify before, because I was not planning on doing a deep dive into what every other township does. I was going to look at our current policies, I have our employee manual, and try to come up with formulas for what we thought would work for not just the people sitting at this table. Really, that discussion is kind of over, aside from maybe setting guidelines, but really for our overall compensation. compensation policy. Is that?
And I think that's really important, yeah.
And are you and Diane, are you suggesting that Lonnie then should take over the healthcare question as part of what he's doing? Or how do you want to look at the
I think
benefits?
that should be, I think any benefit, I mean, if we're looking at just, I mean, my thought is healthcare is a part of a benefit package. And what is the maximum that Dexter Township wants to offer to attract and retain good, good health or good, elected officials? So, yeah, and so I think, I mean, personally, I think that when there's like a cafeteria style and like a maximum that the township will invest back towards people's benefits, then people who have certain benefits already might not pick healthcare, they might pick life insurance, or they might pick retirement, or they might pick, but that we're, as you're bringing people in, everybody has sort of the same basis of being offered benefits that would be helpful to contribute to their growth in their family life.
But we're not offering that now, so I think that'll be a little more complicated analysis than what Lonnie's talking about, which is really just synthesizing the policies that we have and coming up with a common sense method for proposing pay increases. But developing a whole benefits package, whether it's a cafeteria style or whatever, is not a marginal change from what we're doing now. It's a bigger change from what we're doing now, so it might take a little bit more.
But I don't think there's a rush to do it because we're kind of set for this year. So if we're working on what's the, I mean, we have bits and pieces for different, for full-time staff here. So, but when we hired our second full-time staff, it wasn't, okay, check off this, check off that, check off, here's your options. So, I mean, there's not that much in the way of benefits. It's healthcare, life insurance, disability insurance, and a few things like that. So just kind of figuring out a range. And I mean, what does the township want to spend and offer on benefits? So I think you could even come to that number and kind of work your way down. And then as you're thinking about what is the correct compensation, it's kind of all one big picture to me.
So are you going to take that on then, consideration of benefits, a benefits package?
Yeah,
And then, I'm just clarifying, because if it's off my plate, then it's off my plate.
Yeah,
I thought I was doing
I think
it.
you and I can connect. I think you sent some information that will be helpful to that conversation already, and then I'll just try to put it all into one place.
Okay.
that
And
works for you.
if I can help you with anything, just let me know. But I'm not going to do anything else on it, Lonnie, unless you ask me to.
Okay, I think thank you for that discussion. Now, I'm sorry, I didn't look at the agenda. I asked the agenda to be what got published in the paper. It's not supposed to be the discussion of my letter of resignation. It was supposed to be a process for, and I was, that's my mistake, I'm sorry. But it was supposed to be a process for replacing an elected official that steps down before the end of.
Policy on BOT vacancy.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. And so, okay. I guess those wrap into each other. Let's do B, policy on replacing a elected official. Do you want to?
Do you want me to speak on that, or, I mean, because I did kind of, I had a conversation with Diane last week and reviewing how, I mean, we've kind of had some ups and downs on the board in the last 2 years, and just kind of reviewing of how we've handled things in the past, versus, before us, how they handled things in the past, and how we handle things, and how we have handled things with resignations. We've only had one, and that was Mr. Drollet, in the beginning. And at that point, we put forward to the community a search for a new trustee. And I feel like right now we don't have a policy in place in how we go about filling a vacancy when they arise. So I feel that we should discuss what everybody thinks is a good idea. I mean, do we open it up to the public and give everybody a fair shot of wanting to sit in these seats? Because Lonnie ran for office, I mean, we have a process, of doing that, and that's kind of how we've gone about it So I'm wondering if you guys want, instead of just saying, hey, and I know that we can appoint somebody. It is the board's right to appoint whoever, but do we be transparent? Do we offer that opportunity to the community and allow the community to come in and interview, just like we did for the process of a trustee when Mr. Gillette resigned, and we found Mr. McDowell?
Karen?
I hear what you're coming from. I think there's two different issues in my head. If the vacancy is for a trustee, if the vacancy is for the supervisor, I really think for consistency and forward movement, that if possible, somebody from the board steps up and fulfills that role. The seven of us know what we've been doing the last 2 years. We kind of know where we want to go. And to lose that and then put somebody totally new that's not elected, I think it would be, I just think it would be like much calmer and an easier transition if a board member stepped up to take a supervisor. I totally think the trustee, if a vacancy happens for a trustee, that it should go public and handled just like we did when Jim Drollet resigned.
Okay.
We advertised it, we interviewed, we selected.
Mm-hmm.
But a supervisor leaving, I think it'd be nice for consistency to have a board member step up. If one will, if that's an option. I just think it would be easier for us to keep moving forward.
I think, I agree with that. I think, though, that maybe it should be extended to any of the executive the executive elected officials, not just the supervisor. Like, if there is somebody from the board that's willing and able and capable of stepping into those positions because of the, whether it was the clerk or the treasurer or the supervisor, because of the continuity that is needed. Because it's such a critical threesome right there.
But at that point, would it be really handy for a deputy to step up? You know, if let's Maris leaves.
But a deputy was not elected.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you guys all know that I know Alex. I knew Alex previously, so I asked Alex what was typical, because she works with a lot of townships, and she's not here tonight. And she did say that it's quite common to, when an executive leaves, to try to recruit from the trustees, and then if it's a trustee, to advertise. So it's not uncommon to do it that way, but it's not, there's nothing wrong with advertising it, to the public broadly, but I mean, I wish she was here, but I think she was saying that it's more typical to try to recruit from the existing board for the sake of continuity, and then advertise the vacant trustee position.
I mean, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, so I guess I'm the oddball. I do feel if there is someone on the Board of Trustees that would like to put their name in the hat, fantastic. But I absolutely feel that the process needs to be transparent, coming from a transparent board, that we do put a notice in the paper and allow individuals that may have CEO experience, budgeting experience, what have you, to fill this appointment. That person would probably, I would hope, not have an agenda. That person would not be a friend. It would be a new person. We already have fantastic things going on. The roads, open space and land preservation, they're already happening. When Pat Kelly resigned, same thing, tap on the shoulder, Jim Drollet moved up. And I wasn't fond of that transition. I didn't feel it was appropriate. I really valued this board extending that to the community when Mr. Drollet did resign. So personally, I just feel that transparent process should continue.
Honestly, I know this is a big position as a supervisor role, versus a trustee, but I like the fact that, we had Jeff And then now we have Lonnie, and I feel like Lonnie already has brought so much to the table, being new, and he's caught himself up well. And I mean, I really appreciate his perspective and the newness and the new ideas. And he, you know, people that are interested in these positions hopefully have been following the ups and downs of us and kind of would know. We don't know that those people don't exist, you know, that don't want a chance. That's all I'm saying, you know.
Lonnie?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with just about everybody, which doesn't sound like those are two congruent things, but I think it is okay to say that we have a preference that it be a board member for continuity's sake, but also have a public process. And that there is nothing wrong with allowing, if there is a member of the board that's interested, to put themselves out there as well as members of the public. Even if we know, and I do think we should be very transparent. I too believe that for continuity's sake, it's probably better for someone who's already sitting at this table to move into that position. But I do think that it's never harmful for a board like this to have a public process. I think taking our time, the one benefit of Diane's letter coming earlier and being read at the last meeting is that we do have a period of time now where we can make sure that the public is informed. I think there's a lot of reasons why it makes sense for there to be someone from up here that becomes that position. Number one being everyone now sitting at this table has ran and was elected for a position by the voters of Dexter Township, which I think means a lot. But I don't oppose having a public process, even if we know that that's the preference, just so that we have a process that we follow every time and that the community is involved in general, whether it's a trustee or one of the executive positions. But again, just being very transparent, my preference certainly is that it is someone who is already sitting up here that fills that role. But I don't think it hurts us to let everybody know and see who steps forward.
Yeah, I just feel like we should have a policy in place, though, you know, for us and then going forward of how it works.
Absolutely, because we've had two. I contacted Scioto Township, they don't have a policy. I contacted Ypsilanti Township and Superior, and theirs is really vague. So I really think that we should have a policy, because we are the Board of Transparency. We ran on that ticket, and I think it's imperative that we stick to the values of why we ran.
Go ahead.
Can I make a comment? I want to distinguish between transparency and public process, because I feel like that these words are getting thrown around. Transparency simply means that you're clear and you're out in public about what you decide. It doesn't mean that you're not transparent if you decide that a board is going to pick that people are going to step up from the board. That doesn't mean that we're not transparent.
Right.
A public process, right, is simply that we do that publicly so that there can be public comment, et cetera, right? That's different than the idea of doing a public, like
A competitive search.
a competitive search, right? So it sounds like there's three different things that are being said: transparency, public process, and competitive search. I don't think a competitive search is a good idea, personally. I think that because of the continuity of the board, and we're all elected officials, our Dexter Township elected all of us, and that if we can move into different, you know, if somebody from this board would step up into the supervisor position, I don't think that's a tap on the shoulder. It means there's a vote that goes with it. It means it's in public, and that there's a public process because there's public comment, et cetera. So I think that for the continuity of our township administration, as well as the fact that we're all elected, that is actually the most fair thing to do for Dexter Township residents.
And then do we do a
But,
competitive search?
Karen, I want to say something. I have worked in the public sector for most of my career, and I have been required often to post positions where we had an internal candidate in mind because of because of the requirements of the process, basically, because of the requirements that you do a competitive search. And that's a very uncomfortable position to be in, where you're advertising a position and you know that you have somebody in mind who's qualified to do the job. So I'm a little uncomfortable. Like, if we want to make it a competitive process and put it out there for people to submit, any but person who's qualified to submit their resume to be supervisor, I would want it to be not with the idea that we really think it's better to have a trustee, but we're opening it up to the public. I would want it to be truly and genuinely open to the public, because I don't like putting people through the emotional effort of applying for a job that they don't really have a fair chance of getting. So I would say either we do a competitive process and it's truly competitive, or we make a policy decision that it's appropriate for us to appoint an elected official, if there's an elected official who's willing to serve in the role. And I thank you, Laura. I totally agree with you. We're talking about three different things here. I think if we do make a policy decision to appoint somebody from the board, I think there should be an opportunity for public input, and we should be very transparent about it. And the decision to do a competitive search, I think, we should talk about that separate. Whatever we do, it should be transparent with the public process. And whether it's a competitive search or not, I think we should decide that. And if we make it competitive, let's not want somebody from the board.
So then, if it's somebody from the board, then we have another vacancy, right? So then what do we do about that? This is what I mean about
Then we do a public search.
Okay,
Just like
and that's
we
what I
did.
mean,
Yeah,
like,
that's just
that
like
needs to
what
be a
we did.
policy, though, because we don't have a policy for that. And that's what I was trying to say, because either way here, we're having a vacancy.
That's true.
So we need to have a process.
But having a vacancy for a supervisor and having a vacancy for a trustee are two different things.
Yes.
Right, and two different really levels of responsibility and knowledge so far. So I think we did really well with replacing our trustee, right? And when we got Jeff, and now Lonnie won an election. So I'm comfortable replacing a trustee with a public search, or however, out in the public, but I'm not comfortable with doing a competitive public search for a supervisor.
The other thing is, when we do replace a trustee, that trustee is in position until the next election. It's not like if somebody
They have to run.
Yeah, if
They have
somebody
to run
goes
in
out right after an election, they still have a sort of time and they have to run. And so it's not like we're giving 4 years, do you know what I mean?
That's
Yeah.
what happened with Jeff, is he chose
Yeah.
not to run.
He chose
Right.
not to run.
Exactly.
Trustee Sakenga, I'm grateful for what you said. I mean, that was just a fantastic comment, and I genuinely believe that there should be a true competitive search. We all were voted in for what we ran for. And not that I don't believe there's not a fantastic person on this Board of Trustees that could move up into that position. There could be someone else too. And, I mean, if we already have to have a competitive search for a trustee, I just think that it should be any position that is available. We should stick to the same, our same ideas.
I just don't agree with that. I agree with having an open selection for an open trustee position, but if there's an open executive position, I think if we can have one of the trustees step up, it gives us a continuity, keeps us running, we're all elected, we're not appointing somebody. So I would vote that if we can, if somebody will step up to an open position within an executive role, if they're left with a vacancy, that if a trustee will step up, that should be first choice, and then we do a public search for a trustee position. And they serve until the following election.
Well, I just want to add that when we were searching for a fire chief, we did open the search to current Dexter Area Fire Department members only for a month or 3 weeks or something like that. And then after that, when we publicize that, we publicize it after that period of time. If we did not, select someone from that pool, that then we would move forward to select someone, to be open to the public.
That's
So
an excellent
that
Are
would
they
be,
under the same statute, though, that you have 45 days from the time of the resignation or the vacancy to fill it, though? Because that's a different time frame than you're working with.
yeah, well, we could, if you wanted to do it that way, though, you could limit the time. I think if you say, if someone from the board doesn't step up in 10 days, or 4 days, or 5 days, then, I think right now, that would be, that would be a reasonable period of time, because everyone knows that I'm stepping down. So if we said, there's going to be, so then at the end of 5 days, there'll be either an opening for a supervisor or for a trustee, and people who have been watching and are interested in getting involved could then put their,
And if I could, you make an excellent point, like, you're stepping down, we can say, does any trustee want to step up? There might be 1, 2, 3, or 4 who want to go
right,
into that role.
exactly.
They still need a majority of the board to be approved to go into that board. If nobody gets a majority, we are left without an option but to go public, I would think.
True.
Does that make sense?
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, we
It-
couldn't
it
say
is
after
up to
5
us.
days, because it would have to be after the next board,
We have to be able to vote.
yeah, we would have to vote.
at the next board.
Because just because somebody puts in their name doesn't mean that.
Doesn't mean they get it.
Right,
You
exactly.
have to get the majority of this board, and if you don't win that, and nobody else wants to step up, and they don't get the majority of the board, then we have to go public.
Right.
It seems like a nice step-down procedure. And that's kind of what happened in the fire.
Right,
Is that
exactly.
what you're
Yeah.
saying?
yeah.
Yeah.
So open it to current elected officials for X amount of days, and then if no one steps, and if no one steps up, then it's open to the public. But if someone steps up, then that person is the person that's going to be nominated, or if 2 people, whoever steps up from the board, then it would be a vote on that day, and then in April, and then if no one steps up, in the meantime, you're collecting resumes, and then you can, since I'm not stepping down till May 12th, you have until, the middle of the end of June, so, to appoint someone, and you could either do it at the June board, or to have a special meeting.
So do we kind of have a handle on what we want to do?
Sounds
Do we
like we have a
wanna-
motion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do we want to make a motion that this is our process that we're going to do?
I would, yeah.
Can we add dates?
Yeah.
That was just
Yes.
a little,
Well, yeah,
so,
so,
just to clarify, is,
I think Diane can't actually make a motion, right? Or doesn't typically make a motion.
I
So-
guess my
oh,
question, so sorry, let me just ask before we start with a motion. So we would say that we're opening, let's say, for the next 5 days, whatever that date is, or 7 days, whatever it is, that if a current member of the township board is interested, they would let the remainder of the board know. And then the board's preference then is to go into our public meeting April 18th with the intent of approving or voting on that person. But if no one steps forward, then after that deadline, it's open to the public. And again, at the April 18th meeting, the board would consider those applicants? Or is that when we would, I guess that's what's confusing me. Are we voting on the 18th to open it up? Or are we voting for a person that day? What is the
Well,
intent?
Aren't we saying that a board member would have until April 10th or April 8th or whatever to submit their resume? If none are received, then the clerk will advertise the vacancy to the general public. And so the clerk or the supervisor, whoever makes the judgment, makes the call that no application was received from the trustees, and then it gets advertised as a vacancy.
But it really can't get advertised, if nobody does, because
right, if
otherwise
nobody
we're
steps
not-
up, yeah.
Yeah, if person, but if one person steps up, that doesn't necessarily mean that they get the position, because it still takes a quorum to approve that person to come in.
Right.
That's what yes,
Yes.
that's what
Is
I'm
that where
asking.
you're going?
That's what I'm asking about the
Yeah.
dates. So
yeah.
either way, there would be a vote on that,
On the
because,
18th.
and I just want to be very
Andy
clear
will
too,
pick up.
we keep saying trustee. In reality, if Maris or Michelle wanted to step, it's a member of
It's
this
elected
board.
official.
Well,
So-
and the executives are trustees.
Yeah.
Sure.
This is the Board of Trustees, so it's
I
any
just want to be
trustee.
clear. It-
And another question, do we want to open it up for the public to ask interview questions? Like, will the board, whether it's a trustee applicant or public applicants, are we going to interview the candidates at the April 18th meeting? And if we're going to interview them, is it going to be members of the board that ask the interview questions, or members of the public and the board, or how are we going to conduct the, because before we asked interview questions of the applicants.
And I'm still the true competitive search, but what I will say is there needs to be a notice in the paper by the 7th if it was going to be a transparent, well, if we were going to do a competitive search, to have at least a week for applicants to submit their interest, letter of interest.
So we should make it by April 7th, or April, close of business, April 6th.
That,
But we could, I mean, we could do, I don't know, I mean, we still have, like Diane said, I mean, she's not exiting until the middle of May. I mean, we still do have time, and even after her resignation date, we have the 45 days after that. There's a lot of time. I mean, this doesn't have to be rushed.
Right. I think we can simplify it and just say that in the next few days, we would like to open it up to the board, the whole board, for anyone or more than one person to step up, that we would, at our April 18th meeting, we would talk with that person or those people and vote. If nobody steps up, then then we open it to the public, right? Then we do a public, so we post it in the paper. It doesn't have to be by April 7th necessarily, I don't think, but that we open it to the public and we decide by May. We decide at our May board meeting.
Yeah.
There's plenty of time to do that.
And our overarching policy is, what, is that if it's an executive officer who resigns, that the opening, that the opportunity to fill the opening goes first to the board, and if no board member applies, then it goes to the public,
Yeah.
and if it's a trustee, then it's a competitive search to the, open to the public. That's that's the overarching policy.
Right.
So there's the overarching policy, and then there's the application of the policy in this case.
This might be a question for Alex, and I know that Alex is not here, but are we, so just given timeline, are we able to fill the vacancy before there's a vacancy?
We had
You-
that right.
You can't fit,
Yeah.
you can't,
So you
it-
would, with, oh, go ahead.
30 days prior, it's, I have the book. It's 30 days prior, so we can fill the vacancy effective April 12th or later. Because Diane's last day is May 12th.
Okay. Thank you.
Was that your question?
Yeah, I just didn't know I knew that there was probably some legality before because we haven't officially accepted any resignation, and the actual date isn't till June, so
It's until May.
May, sorry.
Yeah.
12th, yeah.
Sorry.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. So does someone want to make a motion to initiate the policy of opening, if it's an executive, if it's supervisor, clerk, or treasurer that resign?
I'll make a motion if people will help me with the.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying.
Because it's complex.
Okay, let's, yeah, so,
So I'd like to make a motion to propose that when there is a vacancy of an executive elected official, that the first, that it is first open, that vacancy is first open to the board of elected officials to apply to fill that position. If no one applies to fill that position, then we go to a public competitive search.
Can I just add one thing?
Well, wait, let me finish and then, well, no, go ahead.
We need to insert that if nobody applies or if a quorum isn't reached to the elected official that does apply, if we don't get a quorum, then there's two reasons that would kick it
Right,
to
okay,
a public search.
okay. So if somebody can squeeze that in, or what Karen just, that's what she said, right there. And then if the board, if there is no, well, I kind of lost my place. So if there's no interest from the board, thank you, then we would open it to a competitive public search. And the other part of the policy is if a trustee steps into that position and leaves an open trustee vacancy, then we will do a public search for a trustee, as we have in the past.
Or if a trustee resigns. If a
Or if a
trustee,
trustee resigns,
if a trustee role is vacated for any reason.
for any reason.
Yeah.
If the trustee role is vacated for any reason, we'll do a public, competitive public search.
Janice, at the risk of you throwing that flower vase at me, could you restate the official motion?
Yeah, and I apologize.
No, it was good.
Do you want me to take a shot at it?
I know. No. Well, somebody, if
Yeah,
someone can.
I wrote it down. Do you
Okay,
want me to take a shot
Diane,
at
if you
it?
can, I just,
Yeah, go ahead and read
Okay.
it, Diane, I'll see if I've got the same as you.
Okay. When an executive elected official steps down, the first offering is to be OT to apply. If no one applies, or there's no quorum to appoint, a public search is initiated. Public searches to fill trustee, I guess a policy is for public searches to fill trustee appointments with a competitive public search. I think that's it.
I think that last statement, as clarified by somebody here on the board, was if a trustee position is vacated for any reason,
Mm-hmm.
then a
Yeah.
competitive search.
It should also be if an executive position is vacated for any reason, not just a step down. If it's just vacated for any reason, it should be, maybe we need to first offer the current elected officials the opportunity to introduce an LOI, and go from there.
Well, I think the first part of that motion was that if there's a vacancy of an executive position was the first part of that motion.
So it's not
Is
just
that
a
correct,
step down.
Laura?
It's not just a
Yes.
step down, yeah.
Yeah, a vacancy of the executive
An
officials,
executive,
for any,
first
we
be
could
open
say for any reason.
yeah, okay. And that would be open to an elected official on the board.
I'll second.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I'd like to offer an amendment if possible. I think we have to have timeframes. So I think we need to say how long it's going to be open to the board before it goes to public meeting. And so I would propose, I guess, in 5 days.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And if it's not fulfilled by the next BOT meeting, then we go into a public search.
For the
Well, it's
remainder
not
of the
filled,
search.
because you can't fill it until you
No, but-
vote on it the
No,
next
but
time.
if nobody,
If nobody,
nobody shows a
Nobody
letter of
applies.
interest or any LOI or anything,
what's a
Then-
LOI?
a letter of interest.
Oh, okay, sorry,
Um,
just.
If that doesn't happen, then it'd be the next board meeting that would kick it forward. What?
Nothing. So sick of acronyms. LOL.
So Janice,
Does that help
you
you?
want to reread that?
Can I?
Bonnie's still going here.
Oh, Lonnie's still
I'm
going.
sorry, it's really, but
Yeah.
my brain doesn't, I can't, can we take a 2-minute pause to allow me to write an actual wording of the
Yes.
policy
Sure.
Yes.
How about
that
if
we
we-
could propose?
How about if we
Go
take
for
a
it, Amy.
5-minute pause? We're going to have a 5-minute break of the Board of Trustees, and we will return at 7:35.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ronnie.
No, I'll be right
Maybe in
back,
1
too.
second.
Yeah, everybody can have a break.
These are my steps.
Thank you. I would like to offer an amendment to the motion, that the motion now read that it is the policy of the Dexter Township Board that if at any time an executive office is vacated, the board will seek internal candidates for a period of 5 days. If at the end of that 5 days, no candidates have been identified, a competitive public search will be initiated. If an internal candidate is identified but fails to secure a majority vote of the board at its next public meeting, a competitive public search will be initiated. If at any time a trustee position is vacated, a competitive public search will be initiated.
I think you need to define internal the first time you use it,
Internal candidates.
because an internal candidate could be a staff or a member of another board or a member of the fire department.
They're elected officials.
Board of trustee, member of the board of trustees.
And yeah, we can't really use elected because if somebody's appointed, they'd be open for it also.
So we'll change, so it would be
A board
is
member.
vacated, the board will seek candidates from the current board of trustees
Yeah.
for a period of 5 days. Would you like me to read the whole thing again with the change?
Laura has to approve it, right?
Yes.
I don't need you to read it again, but if
But
other
does
people
Janice,
do.
does she,
Janice might.
do you want to?
I did not get it down word for word. I'm
Okay.
hoping that Lonnie will share that with me after the meeting.
It is chicken scratch, but I will totally share it with you.
Okay, read it one more time so we can.
It is the policy of the Dexter Township Board of Trustees that if at any time an executive office is vacated, the board will seek candidates from the current Board of Trustees for a period of 5 days. If at the end of that 5 days, no candidates have been identified, a competitive public search will be initiated. If an internal candidate, I'm going to leave it as internal for that one. If an internal candidate is identified but fails to secure a majority vote of the board, a competitive public search will be initiated. If at any time a trustee position is vacated, a competitive public search will be initiated.
Right on. I approve that language.
It says in the MTA book that an outgoing elected official may not vote on their replacement, but if a member of the board puts themselves forward to an executive role, that person may vote. Do we want to add that to the policy, or do we not need to because it's statute?
That's
I think
statute,
it's
that's
statute,
statute.
So we don't
Okay,
need
so
to
you're,
specify.
wait, can you say that one more time? So okay, so
I won't be able to vote.
Diane won't be able to vote on the new person coming in,
And
but
that
the
new
person
person
that's
will be able to.
okay.
And I think it's because of quorum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if they eliminate both of them from the ability to vote, then it makes it really hard. So I guess they pick, that's how it is.
Okay.
Who knows why?
So Lonnie made the motion.
So can I help, can I just more discussion, because I want to understand that. So that means that you, Diane, would not be able to vote on a person who might step up or be interested from the board. You cannot vote on that.
Correct.
Okay.
MCL 168 point blah, blah, blah states that the resigning officials shall not vote on the appointment that the resigning officials shall not vote on the appointment when a township board member submits a written.
Can I just bring us back to a point of order of, we're in the middle of, I made an amendment.
We need a second.
You made a
Laura has accepted it. The
Yes.
person who seconded the original motion has to accept it.
Which would be me, and I raised the question of whether we should amend it to include this specification from MCL, and I think we're all saying not necessary because it's already defined in statute. And so therefore, I accept the
Janice?
amendment.
Point of order, Lonnie, you have made a complete, concise motion. Laura needs to, rescind her motion so that your motion stands.
Okay, I rescind my original motion in
Okay.
service
And who
to
seconded,
Lonnie's.
and Karen's, okay.
So
Karen's- Okay,
I rescind also?
yes,
Okay.
because her motion is now dead. Lonnie has made a complete motion that
Okay.
will place.
Yeah, I'd like to second Lonnie's motion then.
Okay. All right, let's take a voice vote on this. Lonnie?
Yes.
Karen? Notek?
Yes.
Maris?
Yes.
Michelle?
No.
Laura?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Okay, so. The last issue, or the last item on the agenda was the discussion of my letter of resignation, but that wasn't really supposed to be on this, but, does anybody have, I don't have anything to say.
I just wanted to
Lonnie?
make,
Oh,
I
sorry.
was just gonna make a comment back to Michelle, because what we just passed, your example used prior, that when Pat left, they just appointed somebody.
I'm sorry?
Your example of when Pat Kelly left office and they just tapped somebody on the shoulder and you didn't like that, what we just passed will stop that. So I know you voted no and it's okay, but I just want to be aware that we just stopped that behavior. That can't happen now.
And I
with this
understand,
policy.
I understand the idea. Jim Drolet, actually, he had been supervisor. He was probably the proper person to move up, but
I'm just saying we just stopped that position.
Lonnie?
Thank you. I'm glad that this is here because at the last meeting, I did not really get to say much because I was trying to be respectful of the supervisor who asked us not to at that point. But I just want to say from someone who is new to the board and, you know, on behalf of, I believe, the majority of the residents of the township, a big thank you to the supervisor. This board has done incredible work, and I know that there have been ups and downs. We've talked about that a lot, and that tends to, I think, when you're sitting at this table, cloud, I think, some of the actual accomplishments that have happened. But I just wanted to say that, you know, you should be very proud of the board and the actions that it's taken with you as the supervisor. The roads, the open land preservation, I mean, none of these things happen without someone leading the charge. And so I just wanted to express my appreciation for your work and my sadness that it was short-lived that we got to work together, but just the appreciation for all of the things that have been accomplished on behalf of the residents of Dexter Township.
Thank you, Lonnie.
I'd second that.
I was gonna say I second that motion too.
I second that emotion.
Emotion. Thank you.
Very well stated.
Yeah. Second call for public comment?
So,
Oh,
ju-
Mr. Eman.
Mr. Eman, would you have something to say to the board?
I wanted to hear how things went before I said anything the first time. I'd like to suggest that you consider several things. Number one, you not accept the resignation of the supervisor currently, with the understanding that in the next couple of months, you're going to pursue looking for a township manager. If you have a township manager, first of all, anybody can be supervisor who's willing to donate their time to share their wisdom with his board. Money doesn't have to be involved at all. And you can afford to do this if the manager to start out with in this township wouldn't have what would be considered a full-time manager's job. So he would assume the duties of, let's say, the deputy treasurer, deputy clerk, and even the deputy supervisor, if there is such a thing. I don't know in the past, there hasn't been. And that way, people who want to run for the board know that it doesn't take a lot of time. All they're going to do is come to meetings and share their wisdom and determine the policy that they think that this township should be directed in And then that manager's job is to make sure that it happens. And if he or she doesn't make it happen, you get rid of them. Because if you got a board that isn't working out right, it takes 4 years to get rid of them if they don't resign. This way, the board can almost guarantee instant gratification for them. Now, I've been trying to suggest this to the previous board since the last female was a supervisor. But they all wanted to keep their jobs and their money. And some of them came out of a profession where control and authority was important, and they didn't want to give that up either. So I would like you to encourage you to look at something different that would benefit the township tremendously. And you can afford to do it, and I can even come up with somebody who might be willing, at least in the interim, to act as the township manager if they didn't take it on as a full-time job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing no one? Any other issues, concerns, comments from the board or staff? Karen? Laura? No. Michelle?
Not today.
Karen?
No.
Lonnie?
Nope.
Maris? I'm good. Myself? I'm good. Okay. Someone like to make a motion to adjourn at 7:50? Ooh, 52.
I'll move to adjourn.
7:47. Oh, no. 7:47.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Good work. Oh, Lonnie, read this. Lonnie, you want to?
Oh, I didn't sign that.
Do I want to read it? Oh, God.